I took a screenshot because Tom had his arms in, and it looked like he was popping out of a tube. Yeah.
Whoa!
Me.
You look like
Help
Mario
me.
coming out of a tube, buddy.
Yeah. Wow, 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 wow.
It's like that scene from Trainspotting.
I'm going to move my chair. All right. Wow, 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 wow.
Dude, that'd be so cool if that's how you entered every episode, was you just like popped out, like everyone's like, "Where's Tom?" And then he's like, "Boop, boop, boop, boop."
See you later, listeners.
Oh, please do that.
Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, American retro design expert, Dustin Lee, and the incredibly talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glanz. In this week's episode, we talk about how to define your brand as a designer. If your brand is how the world perceives you, then defining it can involve some big questions and tough decisions. However, a solid brand can be a huge catalyst to success as a creative. This episode is a great one, guys, so let's get into the show. So this week, we're talking all about how to successfully brand yourself as a designer. And I don't know about you guys, but despite the fact quite often we do branding work for clients, branding yourself is a whole different ball game. I can happily go and look at, I don't know, like an environmental company or something and come up with a nice brand for them. That's fun. But when it's yourself, it becomes this introspective nightmare of, I think the crux of branding is, how do I want the world to see me and my business? And then that leads to all kinds of follow-on questions like, you know, what do I stand for? What values are behind me? What kind of clients do I want to attract? What kind of work do I want to attract? Do I want to appear high-end or more affordable? Do I want to be friendly and approachable or professional and aloof? Like endless questions, and it feels like you're essentially starting with a blank canvas and a whole lot of confusion. So first of all, I guess, would you guys agree? I do think branding is basically how people view you.
Yes.
And / talk about you. So PR nightmares often impact a brand, for example, for big companies, because public discussion shifts to a negative tone. But I think in general, is that accurate, would you say? Like your brand is how people perceive and speak about you?
Yeah.
Definitely.
With like an emphasis perhaps on the fact that branding is not just visual. It's mostly not visual.
Yeah. Yeah, hugely. It's everything from how you deal with people to the copywriting and wording on your website.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, how would a customer describe that company? That's the brand, you know? Yeah.
So, here's a question. Let's see if we properly defined ourselves. Can you guys give... Yeah, we've got to put ourselves on the spot here. Shall we all have, what is our brand? What's our little elevator pitch? If someone who didn't know about what we offer, all of us, what would we say to them to summarize?
I can tell you what I have said in the past. I'm like an illustrator. So what's that? Well, I like draw. It didn't go well.
You're hired.
Yeah.
I'm not good at it either. I think I end up saying something like historically inspired design goods that are fun to use and save time. But I'm always like, I never am happy with it. Like, I'm never happy with it.
No, nor am I. How about you, Ian?
For me, there's someone who I work with who is who helps me with my sort of direction and stuff like that. So shout out to Joan Gorman, but she came up with this thing, which is that I design, draw, and talk about letters.
Ooh.
So you had somebody else
Nailed
do it for
it.
you.
Yeah, well,
Hell.
What better than one of my audience to tell me what
Yeah.
what I do?
Okay, I love
Yeah.
that. I love that
Yes.
for like an Instagram bio. Would that work for a dinner party conversation? So if you met someone in like the finance industry, they're like, "Oh, what do you do, old chap?" And you're like, "I design, draw, and talk about letters, man." They'd be like, "What? Like, what is that? Is that a job?"
What the bleep is that?
And for the record,
Yeah.
I think that's great. Like, I think that is a great bio, but you know what I mean? It's for different settings. You almost need multiple variations.
Yes.
I suppose you could expand on it by, you say, well, I design letters, but I make typefaces that you might use in Word.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely the winner today. I know with design cuts, I've kind of had a few over the years, and the good one is something like, well, we just, we basically provide an amazing community of creatives with highly curated design resources that help them to do the work they love every day. But normally what I end up doing is being like, well, designers. And they're like, what, interior designers? And I'm like, no, like graphic designers. And they're like, oh yeah, my friend Bobby's a graphic designer. I'll be like, well, your friend Bobby, I guess it's like a website for him, and it's kind of like Groupon/Amazon on the flip side kind of thing. And it's just terrible.
That is terrible.
It's very, very easy to fall into that pattern, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, that's me.
My mom literally doesn't understand what I do. Like, she still doesn't. So I'll get excited and tell her something, and she's like, "It makes no sense."
But the thing is, having a defined and clear why, who, what, where, why you do what you do, who you are and what you do, will help, other people to understand what you do.
It's
Yes.
true.
So if you have, if you have you have your name and under just a sentence of what you do that's really clear, that they can come and, okay, we understand exactly what that person's about when they come on your website or look on your bio.
Mm-hmm.
So that intrigues them to sort of delve more into what you do. Otherwise, they just go, "Oh, I still don't understand what he does." So maybe you can try things out, Dustin, with your mum, and see which one she. Oh, I understand now.
I've tried so many things. I mean, it's been years. Like, she's like, I'll try to be like, it's font. Fonts? Like, that's one of the parts of it. Why on earth would someone? How are you paying for a house with fonts? Who would? I mean, Word comes with a bunch of fonts. I don't understand. What?
Does she listen to this podcast?
I don't think she even knows the podcast exists.
Ooh, okay.
Are you embarrassed by?
I think like she knows I'm on a podcast, but I don't think she's like, "What's a podcast?"
Yeah.
Just for the record, my mum's a regular listener, so I have to watch my P's and Q's.
Oh,
Yeah.
a shout out to Tom's mom.
Oh,
Woohoo.
don't. She already loves you, Lisa.
Yay! Even another
doesn't?
woohoo.
Mm.
And she bought a copy of the portrait character.
Yeah, first foray into design.
I'm terrible at like verbalizing what I do, but I find being visual far easier and writing it. So like I found, although my website was a journey of note to come up with the look and the wording and everything, it's to me it feels like it's like an extension of me, and I think I was successful in getting a feeling across, so that I found much easier to do. But don't ask me to like verbally tell you what I do.
Thing is, I think probably you have to start with the soundbite for it to flow into everything else. I mean, maybe you could do it in reverse. I don't know, but I know I've seen a lot of companies' brand guidelines documents, and I think that's quite a good idea of what a brand represents. Because some of them are very long as well, and some of them are incredibly boring. If you work with a huge corporate like British Airways or something like that, we're like, okay, I actually did not work for them, but it was a company associated with them. I think they were pitching them or something, and I had to go through like 145-page brand guidelines document where it was like, we never use the colloquial "your," we use "you are." and here's 18 instances of correct speaking and non-correct speaking and all that kind of stuff. So a bit of a snooze fest. Obviously, the listeners probably won't need to take it that far, but I do actually. Well, it seems redundant and it seems ridiculous, but it is genuinely kind of useful because consistency actually leads to a more successful brand. And so I totally understand why at a big corporate level people do it. But when you are consistently using kind of similar language and ideas and imagery and colors and everything throughout your website, it does create a very nice consistency. And I think some of the weakest brands who don't bother to go through this process suffer because it's like a hodgepodge and it's constantly different. People don't really know where they stand with it, potential clients and so on.
Yeah.
So I do think taking the time, like everyone works hard on the design work and the bits they like. Often people don't actually take the time to step back and define their brand. And as I say, I think if you start with the sound bite, that then flows down. So a sound bite that I kind of tout around sometimes with design cuts is quality and caring, which sounds a bit woo-woo, right? But it's basically we only release the best quality products and we really, really care about our customers and all the designers that we work with. So on its own, that doesn't sound like much, but suddenly that's going to flow down into the imagery we might capture in a photo shoot. And it's going to flow down into like our workflows and the stuff that defines, you know, the work we put out and what's good enough and what the bar of quality is for that and all kinds of minutiae around that. And everything kind of stems from those two very simple words within a little micro soundbite. And I realize we're a company doing that, but I'd love to hear from you guys. Like, how would that kind of thing be applicable for you?
I would love to share something really quick related to this to start, because I just looked at all of your sites and mine too. And I remember when I did user testing, I paid for some user testing, and people would go to the site, and one of the questions the user testing would ask is, what does this site do from looking at it? So I'm going to read each of our sites, what it says on the top. The very first thing you see.
No, this is painful.
Through the fire, baby. Okay, so design cuts. Very first thing you see is quality design resources at better prices.
Okay.
Ian Bernard says lettering artist and type designer. Lisa's says, I create graphics to help add joy and magic to your creative projects.
Which is so Lisa. That's great.
So,
and mine says retro effects for Photoshop and Illustrator.
Does exactly what it says on the tin. Yeah.
Do we get stars for that?
And I know maybe that sounds quite obvious, but I don't know about you guys. Certainly with ours, some serious thought went into that sentence.
Yes.
And a lot of variations and stuff. And I like each one of those. I really like yours actually, Lisa, because it's so it's like imbued with your personality. And I think that's most key to your business. Like Dustin stuff, I would say, is maybe more functional for people. Like it's very cool and retro, but you know what I mean? People want to know what they get and what they can do with it. Your stuff should have that injection of personality. And Ian, like your work kind of speaks for itself. So having that bio line that basically summarizes that succinctly, I think it's good.
The problem I have is just creating a logo when my style is having so many styles. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can't pinpoint one style as being my own, which is fine because but yeah, it's difficult because like if I do one style, then I might post a load of stuff and I never do that style, and it's a weird thing where it's something I've never found very easy is branding yourself.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So
it's hard for everybody.
Most stressful, horrible event.
So I never do it.
That's why I hire someone else to do it.
I know. Yeah, I find the building of the brand around the logo very exciting and easy. It's the actual logo design that is terrible for for yourself. It's so difficult to
but
come
again,
up with
that's like the concise wording at the top. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the essential start point.
Yeah, it's got to work, and it's difficult. Sure.
So I'd like to hear more about your guys' branding journeys, because I guarantee all your websites and brands did not look like that on day one.
No.
It's been a process, right? So
yes.
Could you maybe like each of you talk through briefly the journey? Like what was it at the start? Was it a hodgepodge? How did you get to where it is now?
Mine started, the honest truth was I was just trying to make money. I mean, I didn't care about the name. I remembered when I was working for Paid to Exist and we were helping small businesses or people start small businesses, they would fret over the name of a business for so long and over the perfect mission statement or whatever that I was like, okay, I can't. No, I just got to make something and get done with it. Yeah. So I literally like Retro Supply. I just named it that because I was like, that describes what it does. It gives them a pretty good hint of what it was. I mean, literally, I probably came up with it in like 5 minutes. I was just like, oh, it's available. And it pretty much describes it. And I named it that. And then I literally pulled out, I think, Futura, and I just wrote the word and I put it up in the corner. And for like a good 1.5, 2 years, that was it. And then once I was like, oh, wait, this is a real business. Then I hired my favorite designer that I thought embodied everything that I loved, like about what I was doing. Because I just knew I couldn't do it myself. And
hold on, why not? Just because it's tough.
Why? Yeah.
2 reasons. One, because it's so like I think it's almost a cliche at this point that it's so hard to brand yourself because you're so close to yourself that you want to try to somehow cram everything into like a single logo and your entire life and personality, and it's so hard. Whereas another person looks at you and they're straight shooters, just like, dude, that's retro stuff and it does this. You know, like it's really easy for them because they just see that thing. So I got someone that I admired, his work named Lorenzo, who I felt like kind of was like a soulmate in terms of this kind of stuff that we liked. And I had him do it, and I didn't give him any feedback or direction really. He pretty much just did it and like nailed it. And now someone that is friends with him is doing a refresh of it to freshen it up. And so that was the one reason, was because I think it's easier for them to do it. But second, I mean, he made like this mascot that was amazing. And let's be honest, Chris Lorenzo, if you haven't seen him, look him up. He's a better designer than me any day. And I wanted to represent the business as best I could. I can make effects, and you know, my specialty is not being the best illustrator or brander, and I'm not afraid to admit that. I'm just not.
I'm in a similar position where I'm stuck, like, because I do logo design, and yet, and you know, I do my own hand lettering and I do my own type design, and it's like, well, is that cheating if I get someone else to brand me? Do you know what I mean? Because
no.
So
Ian, I don't think you've got this, but it would be awesome if you literally just did a hand lettered version of your name though for your logo.
But I've always tried that. Like, it's currently one on there at the moment. I just don't know. I just don't. I think because I
decide.
Yeah, what kind of lettering suits you?
Do you know what I have a problem with? The letter I, the capital letter I.
Let me look at yours again.
Why does it have to be capital?
Good point. Well, yeah, I find the letter I boring.
I think it looks good though.
Prejudice.
Go with lowercase.
See, that's the thing. That's the thing, is like you look at it and you're like, oh, that's just not quite all me. But like I look at it and I feel like I know your work pretty well. And I'm like, yeah, that's Ian.
Okay, so kind of stepping back, I guess, from our stories, for the listeners, I think a good tactic is to show the people around you who know you best, and they can validate if it's you or not. And if they look at it and they're like, that is literally like, that does not say you to me, then it's probably not on the right lines. But if they see it and they're like, oh, like, wow, that is you in a nutshell, that screams you, that probably means you've successfully nailed the brand.
The thing is, when you get excited about a logo and about using a logo, it really helps. Do you know what I mean? So, where like when Dustin must have felt it when he first got it back, and he was like, "Yes, love it. You know, I can now use it on things. Can really encourage you, I suppose."
Everything snowballs from it.
Yeah, because it's on your invoices, it's on your letterheads, your business cards, your website. It's on, be on your social media and stuff like that. So it's hard. You can spend so much time. I've never been happy with any of the logos I've done for myself, and it can just zap or take all your time just focused on that. And like Dustin says, you can get sort of weighed down with the name and the logo and the stuff like that. But it does sometimes help once you have it in place and you're happy with it, that you're happy to sell that product, I suppose.
What'd be really interesting is, like, you're well connected with other letterers. It'd be interesting, like, for you to do one for someone else and them to do it for you, and then maybe it's just the starting point and you go off of that to build your final one in your own with your own hand. But it would be interesting to see how they would be like, this is what I think when I think you, or you do that for them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So how important do we think branding is?
Well, in my business, I think in any design business, it's everything. Because if it's like walking into a gym and asking for an instructor, and the instructor comes out and he's like enormously fat. It's like it doesn't kind of like gel. So if a client
he could have just been fat, not enormously fat.
poor hypothetical guy.
Yeah.
I think the problem is, though, that people often don't know how people are only making really, really vague guesses at who their true audience is until they've actually sold some things, done some projects, or sold some things. And I think the problem is sometimes people like end up spending 3 months, 6 months trying to put a brand together when they don't even know who the real person is that's going to end up being their customer. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the first thing is to like figure out who will give me money for my design services or for my product or whatever.
Without a doubt, because I agree with that, because I mean, when I first started out, I was the same as you. I literally like threw a website together. I bought a theme. I didn't even think I had a logo. I think I just wrote my name out, and so only like when you start getting to know what people are responding to, that kind of determines a lot of. I know that's the wrong way around, but that is the way I did it. And then I kind of realized, okay, so this is the direction I want to go. And then you start really taking it seriously, and then you can build your brand around it. But it is important, definitely, if you want to be taken seriously, because a client's going to land on your site, and if it looks shabby, they're going to go, well, why would I ever employ this person to design my logo when it looks, crappy? I don't know.
Well, I think there's a difference between design and branding, though. So you can have a minimal, like, efficient site that shows your work, often lets them contact you, and that won't necessarily have a comprehensive brand attached to it.
That's fine, but then it must just be that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in two minds, because I agree with you. It can be everything, but I also agree with Dustin. Just get moving and get started. Yes. And I have a close contact in the design industry who basically spent a lot of time and energy on a huge branding exercise for their business. And there were kind of some more urgent things at play with business development and client acquisition that should have been happening. And so the brand actually railroaded, or if I could speak, railroaded all of the other stuff. And really, really wasn't good for the business. So I think if you go too far down the branding rabbit hole, where you're kind of obsessing over how you're perceived and everything else, you don't want to do that and sacrifice the actual crucial stuff to keep the business ticking along. So in that sense, I guess branding definitely isn't everything, but it is definitely important.
Nowadays, I think it's slightly different than it was before. It was have a website, that's where your main, I suppose, shop front is, and so the branding is revolved around that. Whereas now, like for me, I haven't really got a specific brand as say visually, but it's more my face, I suppose. My face, my hand. And that is the consistent thing across all my platforms. So, and I get work, I, sell my products. And, I think that if you have, you have these platforms, whether it's Behance or Dribbble, where a lot of design stuff can be sought, you don't specifically need a logo on there, because it's like, for me, I just got my face, and that's all I can have. You can either have your face, your profile pic, or you can have the logo inside that circle instead. So I think that yeah, it's slightly different in terms of how you can brand, and you can just use your face if you want to.
It's true. Yeah, very true for social. Although I know you also have a website, and that I think your website right now is currently quite minimal still, right, in terms of the design.
Yeah, so I've got two websites. I've got one which is my shop, which is super minimal, and then my other one which is just what's got my mark on it, which is still quite minimal.
Yeah. But you know what I mean?
So,
you could go to town on branding that, and it could be like one of your amazing lettering reviews where it's like, wow, it's like a work of art in its own right, and that could scream your talent. But that is a huge exercise in itself,
and also it might not generate the kind of returns that you might put into putting one, because a lot of people contact me not from, or only use my website to contact me. They don't actually
find it that way.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it depends on your business model or how you attract business. If it is through the internet and it's through your website, then I think that's quite important. But I think the main thing is if you are just using your website for portfolio, then do it exactly for that. In other words, just your name, a contact, and your work. But I think if you're going to go to the trouble of designing something and look like, it's a designed website that has a user experience, to it, then do it properly. But yeah, if it's just literally showing your work, portfolio, there's nothing wrong with just having, as you said, your face or your name or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess it lets your work speak for itself.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's important to note is that a brand is ever evolving, because a lot of people see it as a huge exercise they need to conquer, and then it's done. But it should always be changing, and you will find it does naturally change. Unless you're stuck in a complete rut, you're probably going to mix up what you're doing. And I know you guys have all worked on different stuff over the years. Like Ian, you're getting more into different social platforms, getting more into speaking, that kind of stuff. That's all part of your brand and the value you put out into the world. And it's the same for us. And I think that is relevant for names. Like I remember when Google got started, it sounded like a nonsense word, right? It was like, what is that? That's the dumbest sounding word I've ever heard. And now it's like a verb. You Google something. And the point is
exactly.
They created their own brand. And right now, Design Cuts could be something completely different. It could have a completely different name and look to the website, and we could have different values and be known for something completely different. But we just got started, and if we hadn't built the brand around it, Design Cuts, it could exist, but it could be like a nonsense phrase, right? It could mean nothing. It could conjure nothing to the mind when you say it. But all the stuff that's kind of happened around it and over years and years and years now is what slowly built the brand. And all those moving parts, if that's the kind of top of the totem pole, all the moving parts below that, like the colors on the website have kind of just shifted up in key over the years very gradually as we've iterated and gone a bit more high key. The fonts have changed, like the team dynamics changed, the social media content's changed, like some of the projects we work on have changed. And the same is true for you guys and probably most of the listeners. And so the point is, if what you are doing is evolving, your brand should naturally move with it. Otherwise, it's going to suddenly feel very incongruous, and you're going to develop a tension there where your brand doesn't accurately reflect where you are.
Exactly.
How did you come up with the name Design Cuts?
Truthfully, there were a few things. So I knew I wanted the word design in it. I knew I did not want anything like deal in the name, because a lot of our competitors had that in their name. So I wanted to differentiate, and also I thought it sounded cheap and potentially limited what we did in the future. And I wanted it to be short because I like short URLs.
I like short URLs.
And that was pretty much it. But the idea was like
that's a good t-shirt, actually.
I like short URLs. There you go, Ian. Yeah. You letter it, we'll sell it.
There's another one.
That was it, right?
You letter it, I'll sell it.
Yeah.
Exposure for you, money for me.
Yeah.
Or how about just brand this? as like an aggressive one.
Yeah, exactly.
With like an arrow pointing somewhere
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Okay,
this, man.
boys.
Okay, so for everyone, let's bring it on round to the dear listeners. What do you think people at home listening are going to be struggling with? Maybe they design right now. They know they're not totally happy with how their image is publicly perceived. They know it could be better, but they've never really thought about actually branding themselves. And for the record, I don't mean taking like a hot poker and applying it to your skin. Branding yourself as a design agency or a freelancer. Yeah, what do you think they're going through? What are the common thoughts?
I think people need to be really careful. Like, I feel like you see so many designers, and myself included with things I've done in the past, so many designers use it as a way to procrastinate on doing the stuff that's more painful, like getting first clients, putting yourself out there and potentially being rejected. It's so easy to put stuff up on Dribble and be like, what do you think of my new mark? What do you think of this new logo thing I'm doing? This is for me, and you keep doing it forever. And it's like, dude, that's not going to get you anywhere. Like it's exciting. It's kind of fun, but it's just like, you know what I'm saying?
Sorry to interject, Dustin, but on that topic, I've seen this time and time again. A successful brand does not make a business, but a successful brand kind of puts a business that's already successful on steroids.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
Because I know, like, when mine was like not a very good brand, right? Like I said, I just used Future and put it out. And I remember when like we got our mascot and logo and colors and all this stuff and put it up, I saw the business do better. I saw us get featured more, and I just felt way more confident putting myself out there, but it wouldn't have worked. There would have been nothing to it. It would have just been an empty shell if it hadn't had something behind it at first.
And would you say that all the work that went before it made the brand possible? So you almost can't start with the brand. You have to just start with something. Maybe it's a simpler version of the brand or just anything that works. And then as you begin to define what you're all about and you kind of have some legacy behind you, that is what channels into the brand, which then takes you to the next level.
Or at least you need to be willing to realize that probably the first thing you need to make it, get it done, and realize it's probably going to get scrapped in short time.
Yeah, because that takes so much pressure off. You're like, the pressure for me is thinking this is going to be my brand or my outward look forever. And that's terrible. And it's inaccurate.
The thing is, what would be a better plan is if you're just starting out, is just use a simple modern typeface and just put your name and your little tagline in that. Keep it simple. Start, then revisit it 6 months later when you've managed to get some clients on board. Because I think something that's sort of like maybe overly too designed may the beginning might not then help you to get the clients at the beginning too, if you get what I mean. So sometimes, like Dustin said, people struggle with the start. Keep it simple, start, and then revisit it once you've got an idea and once you've got yourself in place and you have the clients, and then you can add that to your website. You can add a bit more branding to who you are, and I suppose you've got a bit more self-awareness. You've done maybe 6 months. You know the sort of clients you're getting on. You know how you deal with stuff, how you design those stuff, and then that will give you a better idea of what you could put in your branding.
Yeah, and you can turn around and say, well, I know I'm the designer who is super meticulous, and that's what I'm happy to be known for now, because all my clients love that about me. I've started promising that as a character trait to potential clients and living up to that. So I'm going to be the meticulous designer. So suddenly my logo redesign and my website redesign and my new headline on my website and all my copywriting and my social media content, I'm going to push that angle because who I've discovered I am. But you're not going to know that on day one.
No, definitely not. I mean, if I had to tell my younger self when I was first starting out, I'd say rather concentrate on starting and really working hard towards changing your career and making a full-time living as an illustrator, because and stop freaking out about the fact that your logo, needs to be perfect, your website needs to be perfect, because I mean that's the nice stuff. I mean, you spend hours and hours and hours doing that when you could be spending hours and hours and hours on promoting yourself or getting clients or doing products. So I tell myself, my younger self, to stop doing that, get it out there, because the sooner you can build that business, the more later on down the line you can either spend quality money on getting a new brand designed like Dustin did, or you're in a position to be clearer about who you are, what you want to do. Like my new website that I designed, I was much clearer. I knew the image I wanted to portray. So essentially I wasted all that time freaking out about a stupid logo and a stupid the look on your website, and in actual fact that wasn't the issue. You actually have to get it going.
Exactly. And you've ended up in a great place. You've got a strong brand
and now because I have built what I've built, I value my branding, because that now, as Dustin said, that has kind of springboarded me to the next level in my business. But you can't get there without doing the first part.
And I remember when you started, like you were doing all sorts of stuff, like anchors and like logo sets and like things that don't have anything to do with who you are. And I'm looking at your site, I'm looking at it right now, and I'm like, if you had made it when you first started, it would be so off course to who you are. It would just be ridiculous.
Yeah, it would have been so wrong. Yeah.
And it's so perfect now.
I love it.
Thank you.
My daughter would like play on this site. That's a compliment.
Thank you.
So Lisa, and then same for you guys, can you distill your brand, what you're all about, into one word? And then I'm going to tell you the word I would apply to your stuff and your work.
Just one word?
Yep.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
That's a pretty good word. How about you guys? What one word would you use?
Can hand lettering be one word?
No, for Lisa's work.
Oh, for my.
Okay, I'll tell you
That's
mine.
hard.
I'll tell you mine. Whimsical.
Okay.
For who?
For Lisa's.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Because it's just fun and like cute and whimsical.
Are we doing this for all of us?
Yeah, I don't know. It's an exercise, and I would seriously, like everyone listening at home, I would try and do this. Like, forget even your fancy headline or your tagline or your elevator pitch. Can you distill your style of design work to one word?
Oh, you said the style. You changed it now. You said the style of design.
Yeah,
I thought you are.
No, like the style of your design work.
Felice is probably cute.
Yep.
Oh.
But that could be a bit sickly though.
Can we do everybody else?
All right, Dustin, I would say authentic.
Oh, okay.
Dustin, I'd say.
I feel, is kitschy the word? What's that?
I would say
like
not grunge, but like, I don't want to say rustic either. That's the wrong word. But
rustic's quite a good one.
Like juicy.
Juicy.
That's what I'm using. Juicy.
Get your juicy design goods. I don't know.
I've got a word. I got a feeling of a word, and it's that sort of nostalgia.
But you're not allowed to say it on
nostalgia.
It's like
nostalgia. Yeah.
Maybe that's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah.
Because it's like the things that you used to love. You know, the
nostalgic
things weren't perfect, and those sort of retro games, the retro toys.
A nostalgia.
I'll be honest, for everyone listening at home, that is not our most free-flowing discussion, right? We've armed and ahed, and there's like there's awkward silences, and I'm losing my voice, and that's kind of the point. Like, this is difficult. You need to sit down and have these difficult brainstorms, and just, I like to think of it as a brain dump. Like, have a bit of paper and dump everything out of your mind in terms of words that describe your style of design work, style of your creativity, the style of your brand and what you're all about. Just dump it all on a bit of paper and then look at it when you're done and cross out the ones which are like definite no's, then get the ones which really resonate with you, put some in a maybe column maybe, and you'd be surprised how much you come up with. So, we're just throwing out a few, like Dustin, authentic, retro, grungy, nostalgic, and suddenly there starts to get stuff from that, and maybe some of it is strong enough it ends up being your entire like brand summary, your sentence that describes you, but maybe some of it just goes into a newsletter that you send out. So maybe the next newsletter you send out when you're struggling to think of wording, you go get this new nostalgic pack and have a blast from the past or whatever. And it flows into that. And we literally did
like
this
a keyword library.
Yeah, it's like a glossary kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we did this with design cuts very successfully. We just dumped everything out of our heads and went, yep, that's all our favorites. And suddenly we have ammunition for when we go and create content and create new projects and new stuff. We could kind of have this repository rather than the worst thing in the world where you're just empty of ideas and you're like, oh, I have no idea. And that's when everything becomes inconsistent and you get an inconsistent brand because you're just drawing on nothing every time.
That's the whole thing about needing some time to let your business breathe before you try to really deeply invest in branding it. Because it would be easy, for instance, with design cuts, like the first thing someone, if they didn't know much about it, they might be like, oh, deals, bundles. But when you know design cuts, then well, yeah, like they're in the business of doing something kind of like that, but it's actually more a business that's invested in like caring about people or taking care of people or interacting and building a community. I mean, that's what stands out, right? You look at everyone else in all of your competitors and they've invested essentially $0 or outsourced one person to do that. And so, I mean, you could really be selling, car seats, and it would be the same thing. You'd care about community.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've thought that like whatever I do in 30 years, I would take the same framework we have now. And for me, that is a transferable brand. It kind of doesn't matter what you're selling.
Right.
Yeah.
And for the designers out there, a lot of it will be transferable too. So if you stop doing web design and pick up illustration, yeah, the style of work might change, but a lot of those core values and the true authentic you that will channel into your clients' interactions and everything in your website can be dragged over.
Man, yeah, so true.
I think a successful brand, I think it clicks. You feel it click for you and you feel it click for the people that encounter it, where everyone just gets it. And you kind of know when it fits, you can feel it. And I don't know if you guys have experienced that. It's a really beautiful thing and it's great. Like Dustin, if you outsourced it in your case, when you get it back and you're like, yes, nailed it. I think you actually used the word nailed it. And you can totally feel that. And so for the person who maybe transitions from one medium into illustration or whatever, I've heard this from some listeners as well, like Meg, who we talked about. She's like, when I started doing this, it all came to life for me and I started feeling more like me and I could express myself more authentically and all that kind of stuff. And that is like dream territory for building a successful brand on top of that. Yeah. But if you're miserable and finding a real friction with your work, you're not going to be feeling enthused to come up with a winning brand because it just won't happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Nailed it.
Well, I guess on that note, I feel like this is a big issue, so maybe we can revisit it. And I do want to try and we've kind of taken like a 10,000 foot view of this. I wouldn't mind digging into some more of the nitty gritty, and maybe we can get more into detail in a follow up episode and create a PDF or something like that, where I've seen this kind of thing out there, but not usually done that well, where it kind of helps guide you through the process of coming up with your brand and holds your hand for it. So
it's a bit like, you get those books which take you, give you like like sketchbooks that you go through, and they've got like okay, here's 9 circles, fill them with smiley faces, and you have to do a different one in each. And it's that sort of thing. It's having the tools to question. You go through some questions and do it in a creative way where you think, like we did with that exercise of the words, come up with the smells that your business would resonate and stuff.
What's all the stuff you do for your clients? Like, a good designer should be familiar. We've talked about this previously. We've encouraged people to do it with your clients, but like, seriously, do it for yourself. Take the time to do it for yourself.
Fill out your own questionnaire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wise words from Ian. Cool. Well, I guess that's bye from us. We'll see you next time. Bye.
See ya.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. We hope that you're feeling inspired to take another look at what you're doing with your brand and put some real focus behind it for the future. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com or find us over on iTunes by searching for The Honest Designers Show. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the absolute world to us if you took just a quick moment to leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.